Now let's process the transaction from the 25th. Received a bill for $125 for monthly janitorial services from Jeter Janitorial Services. Paid with check number 5. Do you notice anything different about this transaction from what we've done so far? The thing that is different about this bill is we are paying it right away. Let's consult our bill processing steps document to see what it says. So the first question about processing any bill is, are you going to pay it immediately? If yes, follow the arrow down to the Write Checks window. Let's see what's going on with the accounts when you're using this window. You are increasing either an asset, expense, or drawing account, and you are lowering cash. Notice that accounts payable is not affected in any way with this window. So in future transactions, pay particularly close attention to whether we are paying the bill right away or not, because that determines which window we will use, either the Enter Bills window or the Write Checks window. From the home page, let's point to the Write Checks window. Notice the tooltip pops up and it says write checks for an expense that you have not, and that's key, that you have not entered as a bill, or to record a cash transaction. Now technically the tooltip left out the fact that it does not have to be an expense. It could be an asset that you are buying, like furniture, or you could be writing a check for the owner's personal use, which would be a draw and is pretty common. So let's click on the Write Checks window and pay this bill. Notice in the upper right corner of the check it says to print. That means QuickBooks expects you to physically print this check with your computer, and they sell expensive pre-numbered checks you can put in your printer. We will not be doing it that way. In this case that we're doing, Kristen Reyna, the owner, chooses to handwrite her checks and save money by not having to buy those expensive pre-printed printer checks. So we need to uncheck Print Later. Then this allows us to enter any check number in this box. Notice it pre-filled to check number 5 because we've already entered checks 1 through 4 in previous transactions. The next thing we need to check on is make sure we're using the correct bank account. That's the only one that this company has, so we're good. Then we enter the date. Let's see if I can tab to the date. 02/25/19. I'm going to tab to the vendor. I'm going to type J for Jeter Janitorial. I'm going to tab to the amount field, $125. Now notice that the memo field will pre-fill with 555-32. That's the account number Kristen Reyna's company was assigned by Jeter Janitorial. When Kristen Reyna set up the Jeter Janitorial vendor account, she entered 555-32 in the account number field in the payment setting tab of the Jeter Janitorial vendor account. Now there's no need to add anything else into the memo field because once we enter the account, it'll be pretty self-explanatory about what this is. So I'm going to tab down to the expenses field or the account field and I'm going to type J for janitorial, and there we go, janitorial expenses. Now notice this tab says expenses, but you could also enter an asset account such as a computer or a drawing account. They just couldn't fit expenses, assets, and draw right there in that little tab. And expenses is the most common thing that that tab is used for. Then we can save and close. For learning purposes, let's run a journal report to see what the debits and credits are that were entered behind the scenes. So to run a journal report, we go to Reports, Accountant and Taxes, and then we go down to Journal. Now I only want to, now what I could do is I just could change this to all to see all the transactions, but that's too overwhelming. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tab to the date field, and I'm going to only show transactions entered on the 25th. So I type 02-25-19, tab 02-25-19, and I can tab to the next field or click this refresh button here. I'll click the refresh button this time. I normally just hit tab, and there we go. There's the check that was written on 2/25. Now this type column, remember, tells us what window this transaction was entered into. So if you see this check in the type, that means the transaction was entered in the write checks window. So we look at the debit and credit. So the debit is janitorial expenses and the credit is cash operating. So cash is going down and our expenses are going up. So that's how you use the write checks window. It's actually pretty self-explanatory.